Southern kitchens in the 1950s were the heart of every home. Whether it was Sunday dinner, a holiday, a church gathering, or just a regular weeknight, Grandma always had something wonderful simmering on the stove. And let's be honest, food back then didn't have chemicals, wasn't about counting calories, and sure wasn't chasing trends. So pour yourself a tall glass of sweet tea, and let's take a trip back to the 1950s as we bring back 15 forgotten Southern recipes Grandma made. Comfort food that felt like a warm hug, settled deep in your bones, and made you loosen your belt and unbutton your shirt without a second thought. Every Southern child knew boiled peanuts and the magic sound it makes as it bubbles away in that big pot on the back porch. Grandma would start them early in the morning, adding just the right amount of salt to that simmering water. The whole house would fill with that earthy, comforting smell that meant something special was happening. You'd sit on the porch steps, cracking open those soft, salty shells with your teeth, the warm brine running down your fingers. It was messy, it was perfect, and it was pure Southern childhood in a shell. When Grandma discovered shake and bake, it was like Christmas morning in her kitchen. She'd coat those chicken pieces with such care, making sure every inch was covered just right. Then came the rice-a-roni, that fancy boxed rice that made her feel like she was serving something special from the city. The chicken would come out golden and crispy, and that seasoned rice was the perfect companion. It was simple, it was new, and it made Sunday dinner feel extra special. Fatback was the secret ingredient that made everything taste like home. Grandma would slice it thin and fry it up until those edges got crispy and that wonderful fat rendered out, filling the kitchen with the most incredible smell. She'd use that precious grease to season her green beans, fry her cornbread, and add flavor to just about everything that came out of her kitchen. It wasn't fancy, but it was the taste that made you know you were eating real Southern cooking, the kind that stuck to your ribs and warmed your heart. These were serious comfort food, plump sausages wrapped in her homemade biscuit dough and baked until golden brown. She'd make them for breakfast when the whole family was visiting, and the smell would wake everyone up with the promise of something wonderful waiting in the kitchen. Served with her homemade syrup or a pat of butter, they were pure Southern hospitality on a plate. Grandma knew how to make turnip greens sing, and her warm dip was proof of her genius. She'd cook those greens down with bacon until they were tender and full of smoky flavor, then mix them with cream cheese and seasonings that she kept secret. The whole mixture would bubble away in her oven until it was hot and creamy and absolutely irresistible. It was the kind of appetizer that made everyone gather around the kitchen before dinner was even ready. Christmas wasn't Christmas in many Southern homes without Grandma's cheese straws. She'd start making them weeks before the holidays, rolling out that cheesy dough and cutting it into perfect little strips. The whole house would smell like heaven as batch after batch came out of the oven, golden and crispy and still warm. She'd store them in those old tin containers, but they never lasted long. Everyone knew where she hid them, and those tins would mysteriously empty themselves before the holidays even arrived. Grandma's firecrackers were the talk of every church potluck and family gathering. She'd take those ordinary saltine crackers and transform them into something magical with her special spice mixture and just enough oil to make them addictive. The recipe was her secret, passed down from her mother, and she'd make them by the tin full for special occasions. They had just enough heat to make your tongue tingle and just enough flavor to keep you reaching for more. One bite, and you understood why everyone begged for the recipe. Pimento cheese was Grandma's pride and joy, and she made it fresh every week. She'd grate that sharp cheddar by hand, Mix in those sweet pimentos and add her secret combination of mayonnaise and seasonings. The result was creamy, tangy perfection that made every sandwich special. She'd spread it thick on white bread or serve it with crackers, and it was always the first thing to disappear at any gathering. It was simple ingredients made extraordinary by loving hands. Grandma's Jell-O poke cake was pure magic in a pan. She'd bake that tender white cake, then poke holes all over it with a fork before pouring hot Jell-O right over the top. The bright colors would seep down into every hole, creating the most beautiful marbled effect. After it chilled, she'd top it with fresh whipped cream that she made herself. It was refreshing, it was gorgeous, and it was the perfect ending to any summer meal. Every bite was a little burst of sweet, fruity happiness. Chicken and dumplings.
Chicken and dumplings are perfect any night, and these hands have made them many times.
When someone was feeling poorly or the weather turned cold, Grandma's chicken and dumplings were the cure for everything. She'd simmer that chicken until it fell off the bone, then drop spoonfuls of her fluffy dumpling batter right into that rich golden broth. The dumplings would puff up like little clouds, soaking up all that wonderful flavor. I'm not sure if they still say it now, but back in the day, folks would jest and say, "You're not a true Southerner if you've never had chicken and dumplings." Served in deep bowls with plenty of that thick, comforting broth, it was like getting a warm hug from the inside out. Grandma's corn dodgers were rustic little gems that reminded everyone of simpler times. She'd mix cornmeal with just enough water and salt to hold together, then shape them by hand into small patties. Into that hot cast iron skillet they'd go, sizzling and browning until they were crispy outside and tender inside. Served alongside beans or greens, they were proof that the simplest ingredients could create the most satisfying meals. Red beans and rice. Monday was always red beans and rice day in Grandma's kitchen. She'd start those beans early in the morning, letting them simmer with ham hocks and seasonings until they were creamy and full of flavor. The smell would fill the house all day long, building anticipation for dinner. Served over fluffy white rice with a piece of cornbread on the side, it was hearty, economical, and absolutely delicious. Homemade creamed corn. Grandma's creamed corn was summer in a bowl. She'd start with fresh corn cut right off the cob, scraping every bit of that sweet milk from the kernels. Into her heavy skillet, it would go with butter, cream, and just a touch of sugar to bring out that natural sweetness. She'd cook it slowly, stirring constantly until it was thick and creamy and absolutely perfect. It was the taste of summer evenings and family dinners, sweet and comforting, and made with love that you could taste in every spoonful. Grandma's deviled eggs were the crown jewel of every Easter table and summer picnic. She'd boil those eggs to perfection, then carefully remove the yolks to mix with mayonnaise, mustard, and her secret blend of seasonings. The filling would go back into those white halves so carefully, topped with just a sprinkle of paprika that made them look as beautiful as they tasted. They were elegant, they were delicious, and they were always the first thing to disappear from any table. Southern-style meatloaf. Grandma's meatloaf was the definition of comfort food. She'd mix ground beef with breadcrumbs, eggs, and seasonings, shaping it with her hands into a perfect loaf. The top would get glazed with ketchup and brown sugar, creating a sweet and tangy crust as it baked. The whole house would smell like Sunday dinner, and when she sliced into that tender, juicy loaf, you knew you were about to taste something made with pure love. Sweet potato casserole. Thanksgiving wasn't complete without Grandma's sweet potato casserole gracing the table. She'd whip those orange beauties with butter and brown sugar until they were smooth as silk, then top them with a blanket of golden marshmallows that would puff and brown to perfection. The smell would drift through the house, sweet and comforting, making everyone's mouth water in anticipation. It walked that perfect line between side dish and dessert, and there was never a spoonful left in the pan. And Saturday mornings meant the sound of Grandma's rolling pin working that biscuit dough on her floured counter. Those biscuits would rise tall and fluffy in her oven while she stirred up gravy from the drippings of breakfast sausage. The gravy was thick and peppery, clinging to every flaky layer of those tender biscuits like it was meant to be. It was hearty farm food that stuck to your ribs and kept you satisfied until well past lunchtime. The kind of breakfast that made you feel ready to take on the world. Fried green tomatoes. When the tomato plants were heavy with green fruit, Grandma knew exactly what to do with them. She'd slice those firm green tomatoes thick, dredge them in seasoned cornmeal, and fry them until they were golden and crispy on the outside. Each bite was the perfect combination of tart and savory, with that cornmeal coating giving way to tender tomato underneath. Served alongside her other southern favorites, they were proof that sometimes the best dishes come from making the most of what you have growing right in your own backyard. Pork chops and applesauce. Tuesday nights often meant the comforting smell of pork chops sizzling in Grandma's cast iron skillet. She'd season them just right and cook them until they were golden brown and tender. Then serve them alongside a bowl of warm, cinnamon-spiced applesauce that she'd made from apples picked right from her own tree. The sweet and savory combination was simple perfection. The kind of meal that proved you didn't need fancy ingredients to create something absolutely delicious and satisfying. These Grandma's forgotten Southern recipes from the 1950s were more than recipes. They were love letters written in ingredients and served on plates. Each dish carries the memory of hands that knew just how much salt to add, ovens that knew exactly when something was done, and hearts that understood that the best meals are the ones you cook with love in your heart and shared with people you love. Did these recipes bring back some sweet memories for you, or was there a special meal we didn't add? We'd love to hear about your mom's or grandmother's special dishes in the comments below. Until next time, celebrate nostalgia and make new good memories.